All right, buckle up for a deep dive today. We're going to be looking at this whole Justin Baldoni, Big Lively thing. And there might even be a Taylor Swift connection. Yeah, we're going to be looking at a Candace Owens video. She breaks down this whole legal battle on her YouTube channel.
Yeah, this is one of those stories that just seems to get more and more complicated the more you look into it.
Totally. And Owens just jumps right in, and she's totally convinced that Taylor Swift is going to be deposed in this case. Not only that, but she thinks Swift's going to be the first one.
Wow. Okay, so, I mean, if that does happen, that could really change things.
Right.
Yeah, depositions are all about, getting that sworn testimony. So Swift's testimony, well, that could shed some light on some of the big questions in this lawsuit, especially around Blake Lively and how much she was involved in this It Ends With Us movie.
Yeah, speaking of Lively's involvement, Owens definitely seems to think that there's more to the story, like way more than we know.
Right.
She's saying that Swift was much more involved in the making of this film than anyone's letting on.
Okay, so what's she basing that on?
Well, Owens points to a bunch of different things. Like, Lively herself has talked about Swift helping to get Isabel Bearer the role of Lily Bloom. And then there's the fact that even Justin Baldoni has said that Swift was involved in casting decisions.
Okay, so there's that.
Yeah, and then there are these rumors that Swift might have even had something to do with the original composer getting fired. She also points to like how Swift's name is super high up in the film's credits. And then there's this editor who worked on the film who's really close to Swift. So Owens is kind of making it sound like Swift was basically a secret producer, like she had all this power behind the scenes.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I
Yeah.
can see how she's getting there.
Exactly. And then Owens goes on to say that Swift's team has been trying to like downplay her involvement.
I wonder why.
Well, she thinks it's to protect Swift from any, bad press that might come out of this lawsuit.
Okay, so why does Owens think Swift has so much to lose?
Well, I think to understand that we need to look back at that whole fight that Swift had with Scooter Braun, over who owned her master recording.
Oh, yeah, that was huge.
Right.
Definitely.
So Owens basically says that Swift is using the same tactics here.
So she's manipulating public opinion to help her out.
Exactly. And she even points to this Tumblr post that Swift wrote where she said she didn't know that her dad owned part of Big Machine Records, the company that Braun bought.
Oh, wow, I remember that.
Yeah, so Owens is saying that that was all a lie to make Braun look bad and get people on her side.
Yeah, I see what she means.
And then Owens talks about how Swift claimed that she wasn't allowed to perform her old songs at the American Music Awards. But Owens is saying that's not even true.
Right, because owning the master recordings doesn't stop you from actually singing the songs.
Exactly. So Owens' point is that Swift has a history of using her fans to get what she wants and control the story.
She's really good at that, though.
Oh yeah, she's a master at it. And Owens says that, when Swift called out Braun and his family, that led to them getting death threats.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
Yeah, it's pretty serious stuff. And it really makes you think about the consequences of her, her influence, especially with those super devoted fans.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about how both sides are using PR in this whole battle. Owens is super critical of Leslie Sloan PR. That's the firm that represents Lively and Reynolds.
Okay, so what does she like about them?
Well, for one thing, she thinks their motion to be dismissed from the lawsuit is super weak.
Okay.
And she thinks the way they're defending Lively is just questionable.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Do you remember that whole thing where Baldoni allegedly, went into Lively's trailer while she was breastfeeding?
Yeah.
That was a big deal. Well, Owens basically says that Leslie Sloan PR is trying to use a feminist angle to protect their clients. It's like they're saying, you can't sue us for defamation because you once said believe women.
That's, that doesn't sound like a great argument.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Owens also questions if some of the text messages in the filing are even real.
Wait, really?
Yeah, especially the ones between Ryan Reynolds and Leslie Sloan. She thinks they might have made them up to make it look like Lively and Reynolds weren't involved in all the bad press that Baldoni was getting.
Wow.
Until way later than they actually were. She points to the fact that in one of the messages, Sloan says, hi, it's Les, which Owens thinks is way too formal.
That is a little weird.
Right. If they were so close, why would she need to introduce herself like that?
Yeah, especially if they've been working each other for a long time.
Exactly. And she also thinks the way Reynolds writes in the messages is really weird.
Like how?
It's overly formal and almost robotic. Owen says that's not how someone would normally text their PR person.
Right, especially during a crisis.
Right.
Yeah, you'd think it would be a little more casual.
Totally. So basically she's saying that those messages were carefully written to to make Lively and Reynolds look better.
So to hide how involved they were and all the negative stuff that was being said about Baldoni.
Yeah, exactly. And she sees that as part of like this pattern of deception. She even brings up those articles that came out in TMZ and People magazine, the ones that made Baldoni look bad.
Yeah, I remember those.
Well, Owens thinks that those were planted by Lively and Reynolds' team
Wow.
as part of like this whole plan to hurt his reputation.
So if Owens doesn't think Lively and Reynolds are the ones, calling the shots here, who does she think is?
Well, it probably won't surprise you, but she thinks it's Taylor Swift.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, she's basically saying that Swift is the mastermind behind all of this. Like, Lively and Reynolds are just her puppets.
That's a pretty big claim.
It is, and this is where Owens makes her final prediction.
Okay, what is it?
She thinks Lively and Reynolds are going to drop the lawsuit.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
She thinks they'll do it to protect their friendship with Swift.
So they value being friends with her more than winning this whole thing.
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
It's a pretty cynical take, but I can kind of see how she gets there based on everything she's saying.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think about, like, all the relationships and motivations behind the scenes in Hollywood.
Totally. It's like a real-life drama.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's wild how Owens connects those PR moves back to Taylor Swift. It's almost like she's saying that Lively and Reynolds would rather hurt their own reputations than Swift's.
Yeah, and that goes back to her prediction that Lively Reynolds will just drop the lawsuit. She thinks that their friendship with Swift is more important to them than winning this whole thing.
It really makes you think about how things work in Hollywood. Like how personal relationships could be more important than even serious legal stuff.
It's like we're watching some kind of a real-life soap opera play out. But before we get too lost in the gossip, let's get back to, the actual legal issues here.
Right, right. It's easy to get caught up in the celebrity drama, but these are some serious accusations that Baldoni's making. We're talking about defamation, extortion. He's even alleging sexual harassment.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. And no matter who's behind all the PR, those claims need to be taken seriously.
Totally agree. This isn't about picking side. It's about understanding the whole situation, the legal arguments, and what might happen to everyone involved.
Owens definitely seems to think that this lawsuit could be a big turning point, not just for the people involved, but for, like, the whole entertainment industry.
How so?
Well, she thinks it could be this moment where, all these perfect celebrity images start to crumble and people start to question, like, the stories they've been told. It's almost like she's saying this case could start a bigger change where we expect more honesty from famous people and hold them accountable.
That's an interesting thought. It makes you think about the relationship between celebrities and their fans. Like, how much control do celebrities really have over how they're seen? And how much responsibility do they have for what their fans do?
Yeah, that's a really good point. This case is definitely bringing all of that to the surface. But let's take a step back for a second and talk about Candace Owens for a minute. She's a controversial figure. And some people might wonder why she's so interested in this case.
Yeah, that's fair. She's known for making some pretty provocative statements. So how should we be thinking about her analysis, knowing that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that not only getting her perspective here, she's presenting her interpretation, but there could be other ways of looking at it.
Right. It's important to be critical, especially with something this complicated.
Yeah, we can't just take everything at face value. We have to, dig deeper, consider different viewpoints, and be willing to question what we think we know.
Yeah, because the truth is usually way more complicated than any one story can show.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not just talking about a lawsuit. We're talking about truth, perception, and how much power these big names have.
Totally.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into this whole Hollywood saga, what are some key things our listeners should take away?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to remember that this is a real legal battle with real consequences for everyone. It's not just entertainment or gossip.
And it doesn't matter who's right or wrong in the end. This case raises important questions about power in Hollywood, the role of PR, and celebrity culture.
It's also a reminder to be careful about what you read and hear, especially when it comes from people who are known for having strong opinions or biases.
Yeah, we should always be questioning things, looking at different perspectives, and making up our own minds based on the evidence.
And as this case keeps going, it'll be interesting to see how people view those involved and what effect this whole thing has on the entertainment industry.
Absolutely. And, Owens really thinks that Taylor Swift's image is about to fall apart. She says that when Swift is deposed, we'll see a side of her that we've never seen before, something that's totally different from her sweet and innocent persona.
That's a pretty big prediction. If that happens, it could really hurt her career and her relationship with her fans.
It definitely makes you wonder how our perception of her and of this whole situation might change as more information comes out. And especially if that deposition does happen. Yeah, it's like she's saying, get ready for the curtain to be pulled back. She thinks this deposition could be the thing that finally, makes Swift's perfect image crumble. And we see, like, the real her.
It is a pretty captivating thought, this idea of her, this perfect persona just shattering under the pressure of a legal battle.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, right? Like, what would it take for people to actually change their minds about her? Especially with, how devoted her fans are.
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's bigger than just this lawsuit. This case is really tapping into these bigger conversations we're having as a society about how we see celebrities, the stories we create about them, and the power dynamics that are at play.
You're so right. This case really makes us think about the difference between, like, the person and the persona, the image and the reality.
Exactly. And how much we buy into those narratives, those carefully crafted images that celebrities put out there.
So where does all of this leave us? We've looked at the claims, the PR moves, and even talked about how this might impact the whole entertainment industry. What's the big takeaway for our listeners today?
I think it comes down to be a critical thinker. Don't just accept what you see on the surface. This case is a perfect example of how things are rarely as simple as they seem.
So true. It's like a reminder to dig a little deeper, to question the stories we're being told, and to think about the perspectives that maybe we're not hearing.
Because in the end, the truth is usually a lot more intricate and interesting than any headline or soundbite can capture.
Well said. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively, and Taylor Swift situation. It's definitely not over yet. I'm sure there'll be more twists and turns to come. But hopefully this deep dive has given you all something to think about, like a way to understand the complexity of this whole thing, the motivations, and what might happen to everyone involved.
I think you summed it up perfectly. This is a case that really makes us question things, to analyze and think critically. And who knows, maybe along the way we'll learn a little bit about ourselves too, about how we deal with celebrity information and how we perceive things.